Good afternoon. Welcome to Homegrown KC, a podcast dedicated to exploring Kansas City's fascinating history and sharing stories from its rich past. I'm your host, Laura. Joining me today is Amy Loch, the director of the Wyandotte County Museum.
Hi, glad to be with you.
For those of you who didn't listen to our last episode together, check that out. It was about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago maybe. Amy spoke about the museum and its collections in general. Today, we're going to talk about their new exhibit on the history of the Fairfax
Industrial District.
Industrial District, thank you. I was trying to say industry, and I was like, no, that's not right. Real briefly, though, do tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I'm the director here at the Wyandotte County Museum. I've been here about 3 years. I've been in the museum field over 20 now, and I specialize in local community stories and trying to revive museums and make them relevant to the community today.
Okay. Well, I mean, I feel like you're definitely doing that with this exhibit. And quick question, you may or may not know, how did the museum get to be in this location? Because I did not realize you guys were tucked away in this little area so close to the Ag Hall.
So originally we were actually in Memorial Hall downtown in KCK, and they had this dream of putting the museum in a park, and they actually pictured it in Wyandotte County Park, kind of looking out over the landscape. And about the same time, they were developing this park, and they said, hey, we have this great idea. Why don't you go into this brand new park? The Ag Hall of Fame is going in, and you'll be kind of the center of this new development. So in the 1960s, that's what happened. And essentially the park developed around us, and now we're kind of tucked in the middle.
Okay, that works. So do people have trouble finding you?
Yes. Finding the park itself is pretty easy, but we are smack dab in the middle of it.
And it's got windy roads.
Yes, and it has some twisty, windy roads. So we have been working on trying to get better signage. But if you can find the park itself, you will find us.
Mm-hmm. So if you live in the Kansas City area, you probably know where the Ag Hall is. If not, it's like right between the highway and Sandstone, really near Legends, so you should be able to find it pretty easily. All right, so tell me about this exhibit.
So this exhibit is really based on the fact it's the 100th anniversary of the Fairfax Industrial District, which we thought was a really ideal opportunity to tell the story of the area, which is something that most people really don't know anything about. People that have worked there are familiar with it for that reason, but outside of that, many people have no idea Fairfax even exists, yet alone what happens there. Mm-hmm. So this was really a prime opportunity to tell that story. And we were able to partner with the Fairfax Industrial Association that's doing a major festival this fall to really celebrate its anniversary. And it was actually one of the first planned industrial districts in the country. It's very unique in how it was set up, how it was designed, and really a story that we were excited to be able to dive into, learn about, and be able to share with people.
And I know that it was back in January or February, I think I first heard about this. You were putting out a call for artifacts and stories from the community?
Yes, so we've been working on this exhibit for over a year.
Okay.
Last year at the last Fairfax Festival, we started putting out the word that we were looking for stories from the community. We were looking for objects from the community to really, tell the personal stories of the people who have been impacted by this area. So over the course of about 9 months, we collected stories from numerous people, many of which made it into the exhibit, some of which we have for other publications that we might do in the future that we have longer stories for.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that you had a good response from the community on that. And were you also collecting artifacts from the community or just personal stories?
Yes. So along with that, we did collect a number of artifacts, some of which were donated to the museum that will be part of our permanent collection.
Nice.
And some of which that were loaned just for this specific exhibit. So all in, we were able to get a number of different items representing many of the industries that have been in Fairfax a long time. Because a little bit of our concern was, if we got, hundreds of items from one place and nothing from anywhere else, it wouldn't be a very balanced exhibit. But fortunately, the stories and the content we got was really varied.
Did you have a lot Not a lot. Did you have much in the way of artifacts before this?
No.
No, you didn't have any.
We do have a large photograph collection that included a lot, especially with the World War II time period and the B-25s, the Darby Corporation. A few other photographs from Fairfax, but in terms of three-dimensional objects, we really did not have much at all, which is part of the reason we made such a strong call to the community, because without them, there really would not be the visuals to the exhibit.
How did you go about researching this?
So we actually had a volunteer that passed away about 3 years ago now, and his life obsession really was collecting every piece of historical information on the county.
Okay.
And he kept files on every subject imaginable, of course, one of which was Fairfax. So we have essentially more than 3 boxes of every newspaper article that he collected related to Fairfax in chronological order, by the way. So that was a great resource. A little overwhelming, but and then he also had separate files on many of the companies. So we had, every article written on GM to go through. We also had chamber minutes. We had the whole collection from the Kansas City, Kansas Chamber from the early 1900s up till about 1970. So we had all of those minutes. I mentioned our photograph collection, a few oral histories in our collection, as well as a lot of things that we collected, magazine articles that we found related to especially World War II. I mean, we really dove pretty deep to try to find everything we could to keep it well balanced.
You mentioned you had oral histories in your collection. Did you do more oral histories during your research?
We did not for this specific exhibit. Mostly we've collected written stories as well as ones that we essentially transcribed from people and had them double check to make sure that's what they were saying. It's something we'd like to do more of in the future, is actually collect oral histories as part of our projects. This is just one where our time frame and our budget just didn't allow it.
It was small, yeah. So I think you have a few events that you're doing along with this exhibit, is that correct?
Yes, and actually that reminds me, I forgot. Along with the exhibit, we actually got a grant with the Fairfax Industrial Association to have a video done.
Okay.
So the video actually is really the oral history piece. And it was supposed to be done for the exhibit. Unfortunately, it is not yet done. But there's a number of interviews and oral histories that were done as part of that, which just are not part of the actual exhibit, but will be shareable with the public eventually.
Okay.
But in terms of events, we did have the Wyandotte County Economic Development group out here that had a special event. The Fairfax Industrial Association will be having a luncheon. We were featured at one of the Monarchs games for Fairfax Night. Then we've had a number of school groups coming through as well. So things like that are kind of what we've been doing.
Okay. And I read that you're going to have a miniature version of the exhibit at the Fairfax Festival.
Yes. So the Country Club Bank is actually sponsoring it at the festival.
Okay.
So there'll be a tent. We'll be able to take the panels out, some of the less fragile objects, and other things that people can flip through and look at. Will all be at the festival.
Yeah, at the end you had a table that said, "Please touch this," not the other stuff, just this. That was cool. You don't see that too much.
We had so much that really didn't fit in the exhibit itself that we wanted people to be able to dive in and explore whatever it is they were interested in and really get up close and personal with the documents. So a lot of them are copies of things. A few of them are binders that other companies shared. Just a variety of things based on people's interests.
Some really good maps, too. I didn't realize that Quindaro was quite so close to Fairfax, and I think one of your posters said something about folks that live in Quindaro were pushed out by Fairfax. Is that what I saw?
I don't think that's completely accurate, but it was part of the Quindaro Township. So the Quindaro Homes was an area that was built for World War II type housing, which is really close between Fairfax and Quindaro. Okay. I think a number of families were relocated when that housing project went in, I think is what it was talking about. But yeah, Quindaro Township actually encompasses that whole area. So they serve the fire, emergencies, things like that.
All right, we've been talking about the exhibit. Let's talk a little bit more about Fairfax history. So what kind of industries made their home in that area?
So it's really kind of a fascinating evolution of industries. It really started as a swamp. There wasn't much there. There was some swampy
That's
farm
true. We
life.
should start back with that.
And really, it was Guy Stanley that had this vision of turning this, land that wasn't real useful for much of anything into an industrial district. And it was really his dream. And early on, it was really just a little airport hub. And there were flight shows, air circuses. And we have a few pictures of, there's like this field and pretty much nothing. And, an airplane taking off was really the start of Fairfax. From there, it grew. There were several early airport manufacturers in the area. There was a granite company, some agricultural businesses. And it was growing, but, then the Great Depression hit. It became harder to attract businesses. But it was still really a place with a lot of potential. They put in this giant new food terminal that they thought would compete with the city market and draw businesses over. And it wasn't quite working as well as they'd hoped until the late 30s, and the military is really what set Fairfax up for the future. So it became a military base during World War II. The B-25s were produced here, Derby landing craft. And after World War II, it really boomed. So people coming back from the war, looking for jobs, people had more disposable income, and it really grew and expanded post-World War II to kind of the district we know today.
Was there much crossover in industries between Fairfax and Stockyards? Because they're kind of right across the river from each other.
They are, but I don't really think there's actually that many crossovers in that particular reign. Fairfax became a great place that people that needed to ship things down the river, needed railroads, made easy access, and then anything that they needed a flight in or out was really Fairfax based. So it did become a hub for, aircraft clearly, but also agricultural implements, because at that time there was still a lot of farmland surrounding this area. And then commercial building products like insulation with Certainteed and Owings Corning started being produced post World War II as housings were booming. And it was really a very diverse base of industry.
Okay. Well, so there's a little bit that talks about, and also I think I saw a few photos from the 1903 flood, which is before Fairfax got started, and they had to do some levee work to keep it from flooding. But with the 1951 flood, did that put the brakes on Fairfax any, like it did with the Stockyards?
So fortunately, by the time the 51 flood came, even though Fairfax did flood, it had pretty high levees in place, and there were already plans in place to make those levees stronger and better.
Okay.
So they honestly knew it wasn't where it should be when the 51 flood came. They actually were about 550 days away.
Oh, close.
They actually had new projects that were in the works that had just started that they just didn't have time to complete. Mm-hmm. So there are a number of businesses that, question should they stay there. But overall, the commitment to strengthening those levees and dikes was already there. And I think that's really what saved Fairfax at that point.
Okay, well, that's good. Because it's still a booming part of the county today.
Yes, there's 130 businesses in Fairfax today. It employs over 10,000 people and generates over $5.4 billion in sales.
That's a lot.
People that don't work there just don't realize how much is coming out of Fairfax. 95% of the area's unleaded gasoline and diesel is actually going through the pipelines in Fairfax. I didn't mention Phillips and companies like that were there. And then Kellogg's actually makes 85% of the world's Cheez-Its in Fairfax.
I love that fact. That's fun.
Who doesn't love that fact? That's one of the best things to celebrate. Cheez-Its.
And you had I'm not sure what to call this, a booth where you had your artifacts? How are you referring to that?
our cases.
A case. That's much better.
Yeah, they do kind of look like booths, but yeah.
You had a case that was about Kellogg, tracing the company history back to Loose Wiles Biscuit Company. That was a cool connection. I didn't know that they were, connected.
Yeah. A lot of our businesses in Fairfax have really long histories. Several of them have merged and changed over time, but even the employees that work at some of these companies like, I had no idea that it had its start as X. So that was one that's been really fun, and people have had, great comments and feedback, especially on like Facebook. We gathered all kinds of comments about people's relatives that worked at Kellogg's or Keebler or Sunshine Biscuits, whatever version it was, and their strong feelings about cookies and crackers.
Did you have any personal connection to Fairfax?
I do not personally. Our visitor service person actually worked at Phillips and had several other family members that worked at several other businesses in Fairfax. So he's been kind of our personal connection voice when people come in the door.
Okay. I only found out like 2 weeks ago that I have a connection. So back in like the 70s, my grandfather said he used to drive semi for one of the petrol companies.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I mean, I knew that he drove. I just didn't know what it was for.
We've had several families that have come in that have, talked about multiple generations of relatives that have worked at different companies. And it's kind of fun when you have those families that come in that connect to many different businesses and parts of it.
Has there been anything that you've learned during this whole process that you didn't know before and was interesting or surprising to you?
I think I personally, as well as many of our visitors, are surprised at how diverse the Fairfax area was. All the different things that have happened there over time that most people think, well, it's an industrial district, there's businesses, but there's so many different layers of stories and connection points in this story that myself and many of our visitors are just surprised at how much there is.
Well, can you give us a example?
People don't know much about the early flight schools. Dr. Davis was one of the earliest African-American pilots in the country. And actually, he was trained in Fairfax and went on to train, I believe, 40% of the other African-American pilots of the time period.
Wow.
Who knew? So that's one of the stories. People often remember the B-25s and Darby, but they don't really know anything beyond that. So most people have no idea there's 130 businesses, what the businesses were. The food terminal history is kind of its own special thing that, it was supposed to be a major market, that it became a military depot. It's just that many of the businesses and, their evolutions is really surprising to people.
Okay. So, I should have asked this at the beginning. What is the length of this exhibit?
Well, that's a great question. So our exhibit opened, I believe, July 5th, and it'll be on display here until September 24th.
Okay, so y'all got, I suck at math, 6-7 more weeks to come see it, and you really ought to.
You have plenty of time. We're open to the public Monday through Saturday from 9 to 4, admissions free, and we encourage you to come out and see it.
Yeah. I didn't have any other questions in mind. Is there anything else you wanted to tell us?
I think we covered most of the highlights. People just need to come see it for themselves.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. That'll be all.
Thank you.
Seem to shake this feeling, and I can't seem to get you off my